All right. So now I'm recording. So everybody can have the benefit of having the recording later. So far we have defined main. We put our print statement in. I've declared what X is to start off with. And I've started the first part of the if, right? So now let's add the else if. So when we get ready to do else if I hit enter after the print line, it's still indented. Well, since I'm finished with that portion of the conditional statement, I now have to backspace out to move my indentation back out. So all the pieces of the if will line up with each other. If, and else will all be at the same indentation point. And remember, Python programmers are lazy, so they didn't spell out else. They just did ELIF. Put in our test for what we're checking for this time. So this time we want to check to see if X is actually equal to 5. So remember 2 equal signs. Don't forget your colon at the end. And then we need another print statement. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and put the else in because why not? So when you have an else, there's no test. And the reason the else has no test is because everything not included in the previous tests fall into that bucket. So you kind of can think of them as sorting buckets. The first if is going to give you one outcome. The else if gives you a different outcome. And everything that's not included in the other two falls into the else. Now, if you don't have an outcome for the stuff left over, just leave else off. So if we only cared if it was equal to or greater than, we could just leave the else completely off of this. Okay. So if we run it now, we should still get the same answer. Right? But we also could come in here and instead of having X set up, we could actually do an input. Hey, this is a good time to show you how to change those things. Input, enter your value. I don't care what it says. You could say enter a number. I don't care. And then when you read it from input, it always reads in as a string. And remember, you can't do math on a string. You can only do math on an integer, a double, a float, some sort of number. So to this one, we're only going to take whole numbers. So I'm going to convert this to an integer by using a very fancy function called int. And I'm just going to put X in it. So what this does is it says I'm going to cast whatever's inside the parentheses, in this case, X, and I'm going to force it to be an integer. This works fine as long as it's one of a recognizable number. If you put an E in there, it's yeah, not going to be happy with you. Right? So and since I've set it equal to X, I've now overridden the string with the integer, and I can continue on using X as a number. Now, here's the crazy part. If I need to print X, now I've got to convert it back to a string. Because print statements won't print numbers, they only print strings and characters. So oddly enough, let's just show you an example. Print X. This is going to fail, but I want you to see it fail. Or it should fail. Knowing my luck, Python will decide on a wild hair not to make it fail. So enter a value. Let's put in 4. Of course it did fail because I put in the wrong number. Let's do it again. You hate that I have to go back over here to run it every time. So if I put in a number greater than 5 this time, see, it's not going to fail. I absolutely hate it when Python does loosey-goosey crap. But generally speaking, you would have to convert this to a string. And it does it the same way as converting to an integer. You just use str in front of it. Yes. What? It would have just given you an error saying that it was type, probably would be a type mismatch. So I think it will fail. I know how to make it fail. So now I'm trying to add a string to a number. And it won't do that. So you get cannot concatenate string, not int to string. It's going to say something about integer and string or type mismatches. I always start at the bottom, but if it ever says str, int together, that usually means you're trying to put 2 different data types together. It doesn't like that. That's when you can come in here and put string. How come my touch screen works too well sometimes and not at all other times? So now if I did it, it works because it forced 7 to be a string, and then it can put it with the other words and make another string. So letters can only be added to letters. Numbers can only be added to numbers. Go figure. All right. We'll keep doing that because when we do the next assignment next week where you have to do the guessing game, there'll be a lot of having to convert numbers and strings and back and forth. So more practice to come on that one. Oops. So that line's not absolutely necessary for this project, but we'll leave it there. All right, so that did part 1, right? And just to make it clearer to read. Oops. I can't type or anything today. It's going to be one of those days. All right, so I noticed that I tabbed myself back out because even though I went down several lines, it still was keeping the tabs for the if else statement, right? So now this one is check to see if a number is positive. If I wanted to check to see if it was positive or negative, what code would I need to do that? I'm being lazy. If you copy and paste, it does not bring the indents in correctly, so just be aware that you will have to fix that. And if you copy and paste from a PDF, the quotation marks are not correct, and you have to go and replace them all because Microsoft uses fancy quotation marks with extra formatting than Notepad or Idle. So I pulled this in with a blanks in it. So what we need to do is figure out what goes where the blank is. And yes, I will have to remove all the underlining to fill it in. So if I want to know if it is a positive number, what test do I have to put there? How do we know if it's positive? No, that's how we know if it's even. Positive. Greater than 0. if number is greater than 0, we're going to print out that it's a positive number. If it is 0, what do we have to do? Right? And if it's not equal to 0 and it's not greater than 0, then it has to be less than 0. So therefore, it's your negative number. Is this helping, or do y'all feel like I'm insulting your intelligence? Is this too easy, too hard? I'm going to teach y'all to talk to me. I'm going to go back to writing on the board. I got more interaction from you guys than I did any other time the day I wrote on the board, but I can't videotape it very well. Unless one of you wants to stand there with your phone out and videotape the whole thing. Then it'd be like the Blair Witch Project, and it'd be just bouncing all over the place. All right. So that's example 1 of part 2. Example 2 of part 2 is your grade thing, right? And again, I'm going to be like, oh, wait, we didn't run that. Y'all going to let me get away without testing it? Y'all are really trusting of me today. All right, so the first one needs a value. So that's the one where we're checking if it's greater than or less than 5. Now we need a number. Right? So when I go to grade this, I could just run it, put in 2 numbers, and it should tell me the first one is more or less than 5, equal to 5. The second one should tell me if it's positive, negative, or 0. I'm gonna be honest with you, if you're doing something like this and you want to just test one piece at a time, just comment out the stuff you already have working. Just don't forget to uncomment it before you turn it in, because we have reached the point in the semester where if you turn in code that doesn't run, I don't grade it. So if when I press run and it comes up and it's a great big red error, I go, it doesn't run. And I move on. Because they're getting long enough that I would spend a long time trying to figure out where you should at the very least have all the syntax errors out. It tells you where they're at. Fix them. All right, so let's paste in this one about grades. I'd like to tell you that there's a way to make it do all the tabs correctly, but if there is, my computer hasn't figured it out yet. And anybody that tells you Windows 11 is better than Windows 10 is wrong. Me and Windows 11 do not like each other at all. I got rid of all my menu structures.
I don't like how to change the name of a file. You have to go into more options for some reason. It's so weird.
Let's just put it this way. I am very old. I know this. I know I'm old. But why did that not work? Because it's a comma and not a shh. Just ignore your teacher who's lost her mind. Okay, so I commented part 1 out just where we didn't have to deal with it. And I get more stuff on the screen. So if we have the scores, and I actually did this and it's actually all written for you in the PowerPoint notes, but this is again just going to be you guys putting in tests. So if score is what? No, we're trying to do an A. Greater than or equal to 90. And then this one would be Yep. And so on and so forth. So again, I'm lazy. Now, if you do use my copy paste techniques, make sure that you don't forget to go back and edit the things that need to be edited. Because it's really easy to get copy paste happy and then forget to change the numbers. Yes, ma'am. No, it's just the second part of part 2. Part 3 actually doesn't have any code written. So this time it's going to ask me for a score, and then it's going to check to see what the score is, right? Notice when I did these, that when I did the input, I incorporated the conversion into the question. Anybody notice that? Okay, so I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger where we can see the whole line. So number equals int, input, enter number. So this portion right here is what you're used to for an input statement, right? I just took the converter, the int conversion, or the int, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it a converter. The converter function that converts it from an integer, from a string to an integer, and I just wrapped it around the input statement because coding languages will let you do that. They'll let you call a function inside of a function. So the int function's input is the result from the input function. That makes sense? I see one no. Okay, so I'm going to explain it one more time. So, and actually you could do this on 2 lines. So I'm going to do that real quick. Let's take it down to 2 lines. So this is what you're used to seeing for an input statement, right? That makes sense. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to get input from the screen. This is the question I'm asking my user. I need that to be a number for me to be able to do anything with it. So you could put it on 2 different lines and say number needs to equal an integer. Whatever is already in number, I'm going to change over. Does it make sense as 2 different statements? So all it did, it's because coders like to have fewer lines of code, is it squished them into 2. So instead of assigning what the user typed in to number and then coming down and converting it, this line down here gets the number from the screen, converts it, and then assigns it. So it just basically takes 2 steps and puts them on 1 line. If it makes more sense to you in 2 lines, absolutely 100% do it in 2 lines. Don't think that you have to make things so complex. I have had people come into my classes that have had programming languages in high school or somewhere else, and they are just bound and determined that they're going to put as many commands in a line of code as they possibly can, because they are not going to type more lines of code than they absolutely have to, and then they forget something. Or they don't get it in the right order, or they mistype something in some way, shape, or form, and it's so much harder to figure out where the problem is, especially if it's a logic problem and not a typo problem. So clean code to me has more lines. You'll find other professors that won't have that same philosophy, but I just assume you do it on 2 lines and do it on 1. If it makes more sense to you on 2, do it on 2. If you need to do math with your inputs, it has to be converted from string to one of the number formats. There is one for float and there's one for int. Those are the only 2 we'll ever use in this class. I think there's one for double, but we won't be using numbers with that many significant digits. So just stick with float. So if you need a decimal place, be float. You need a whole number. And they don't abbreviate float. Float felt. You abbreviate everything else, but I don't abbreviate that one. All right, so does this make sense now? It's 2 lines instead of 1. Would any of y'all have caught that and questioned me on it if I hadn't have brought it up? Probably not. So the one thing, if I teach you nothing else in this class, the one thing I want to teach you is to be very, very detail specific when you're reading and writing your code. Because computer science is all about the details. All about the details. So let's run it now and see what we end up with. So I'm going to enter a number. That's positive. I'm going to enter a test score. And that gives me a B, right? Yeah. Now, I could have put that in a loop and said, how many grades are you going to enter? And then I could go and ask the user for all those grades and then convert it to a letter grade. Hint, hint, something like this is coming in your assignment. Hint, hint. Because you can use if statements and for loops together. More commonly, you're going to see if statements and while loops, which we're learning about next together, because while loops use the same Boolean logic. They run until the condition is not met. All right, so that's part 2. Part 3 is going to ask you to write, and I'm going to ask you to do this on your own. We're sitting here. I'm not going to write it for you, but I will sit here and help you. Write code that asks the user for a number and prints whether of, let me make the screen bigger. Prints whether it is even or not. So now we can do your even or not. So if you look at your code that we just wrote on whether or not it was above or below 0, it'd be very similar, right? So you need an input statement asking for a number. Then you need, which obviously you could copy and paste for one of your other input statements. Then you need to create an if statement that checks whether it's even or odd. Do we all know what an even number is, what an odd number is? Is 0 even or odd? Zero is 0. Just like it's not positive or negative, it's not even or odd, it's 0. Sure. Computer logic, not math logic. You can write it either way. I generally put lump, if I'm generalizing, I generally lump 0 into evens, but technically you can't divide it by anything. So if you put it 0 into your test, it should mathematically give you an error because 0 divided by anything is weird.
How does it do modulo?
I don't know. I've never tried that. There you go, a challenge for you. You can actually use modulo for even and odd if you want to get complex. It's logic wise in the computer it is, but not necessarily for students that have never used modulo. All right, that being said, the next one you need to work on is you need to ask for an input and ask them how old they are. Right? And if they're over 18, they can vote. If they're under 18, they can't vote. I'll add a caveat to this. They also need to be a U.S. citizen. But you don't have to add that to your statement. And I wrote this long before we started having all the political unrest we've had the last few weeks. I'm not trying to be political here. I just wanted something that had an age in it. I do highly encourage all of you to vote. I don't care who you vote for. Exercise your right to. Amazing thing how many young people don't vote. My husband in his late fifties, he doesn't vote. And every time we get into a political argument, because we don't have a stance on a lot of things. I win every argument by, until you're ready to vote, you don't have anything.
Yeah, I can't tell. Which I don't know, it's everybody, it's just. It's gonna be. Remind me of zero. The visionary, it's 5-0. The visible line of the community. You could tell.
But I
It's.
Oh, is this you want to school?
Oh.
Six divided by 2 is. 7.
Anybody else have a question?
We're talking about, like, it's not all, here, it's like the print statement, it's right under board. So it would be like this.
Even if it's divided by 2.
And then. So you can go left here.
I don't know.
But you can get.
Train numbers.
I can have to do a ranking. And you want to check this number between my 5 and 7. So I'm gonna start with example that.
Number of agencies. That's very. I have a. What's an artist that's all from me, right?
Oh, you can look at that. Okay. I thought the line is okay. Okay. So even under. Okay. Oh. Divided by, yeah, so I've got it. If you have, if it's not. I'll leave it out. All right. Good one, you are using modulo and I'm proud of you for doing it correctly. So somebody asked me as I was wandering around how you would do a range. So let's say you wanted to do a range. And the obvious one to try that on is the grades because it really is 80 to 89, right? So what you could do, if you wanted to, you could do if score is greater than 80 and score is less than or equal to 89. And that'll get you between the two because both have to be true. Does that help? And if you really want to get technical, you could, or one, if your brain works that way, you could put less than 90. Because if you don't have the equal sign, it doesn't include 90. It goes up to 90, but not hitting. That make sense? So either those keywords we were talking about, when we were talking about or and, you use those to connect pieces of things, to device together. All right, so even, how are we doing on even odd? Terrible. All right, so because I want to not have so much code showing. Nope. All right, so I commented out the other stuff where I can just. The main and all is still up there. I'm just coming down here to type code because where you can see it better, right? So even and odd. So there's two ways to do it. I'm going to show you the modulo way and the non-modulo way. So we need a number. Right? Oops, did something wrong. If you ever hit enter and it doesn't indent where you think it will indent, that means you probably left something off of the line above it. So if I enter the number, if number, which one do you want me to do first? The with modulo or without? Without? Without. So if number divided by 2 right? Modulo way is easier. If number modulo 2 I can't type today. Now, is there another way to do this? Not easily, because you would have to divide every number. And so do y'all remember doing modulo? All right, remember if you use the percent sign, it divides the number on the left by the number on the right, and it gives you the remainder after it does integer division. So any number divided by 2 that is even would have no remainder. So the remainder would be 0, right? All other numbers, by definition, if they're not even, are odd. Could you factor in 0 here if you wanted to? I guess. Let's run it and see what it does with 0, just because I'm curious and I've never tried it. Says it's even? Okay, well, y'all have already run it. I trust it. 0's even. Python said so. I'm okay with that. But don't be surprised if you do in some other languages try to do division on 0 and you get some sort of error. Because some languages are much more nitpicky about 0. Yes. I'll have to come look at what you're doing. I don't understand what you're asking me. I'll come look at it in a second. The voter eligibility one, again, because I'm lazy, I'm just gonna copy and paste and change some things. I'm gonna change this to grade.
Age.
Oh, age, sorry. Thank you. Guess what? Python would have let me gone with it. And it's very simply just going to check to see if it's greater than 18. are, should be greater than and equal to 18, right? Because you are, if you are 18, you could vote 2. All right,
What's a little bit?
what?
Percent?
All right, so I'm gonna actually stop recording right now, but I'm gonna go around, and anybody that hasn't got this working, we can, I will help you with it.